you need persistence, you need hard work. I think you need a love for your subject, which is going to sustain you through the inevitable bits of disappointment that you get in research, because you're asking hard questions, you're trying to do difficult things, and so you will hit problems. And so that love for the subject and curiosity will sustain you as you go through. But I think you also need strategies for dealing with disappointment. I think that is part of it. I think you also need some realistic attitudes about the resources that go into research. Research costs money, and a large part of being an academic is actually trying to raise funds for your research. So it's worth being aware of that. But I think also a kind of challenge that a lot of us face in academia is the fact that heads of department want people to be raising grant income all the time, because the more grant income a department gets, the more money it has to keep itself running and to keep the photocopier going and the lights on. And so there's often a pressure to keep raising money without necessarily worrying about what the final result of the research is. And I think it's very important to have the right perspective in your research life.
Yeah. Because what would the right perspective be?
Well, I think money is important, but it's not everything. Yeah. And stewardship, I think, is important. Stewardship of the resources that you have to do the research that you want to try and get done.
And when you speak about persistence and dealing with disappointments, could you give some examples of what that's like?
Well, I think let's think of some good examples. So I think it's very common when you're doing research and you're applying for funding, for example, that you get turned down. And also when you apply for jobs, you'll get turned down. I mean, that happens a lot. And so you have to
submit a paper to a journal.
Or you submit a paper to a journal and it gets rejected.
Which happens a lot.
And that happens a lot, and sometimes fairly and sometimes unfairly. And I think I can remember when I was when I was much more junior in my career, I would tend to think that when I was writing an application for a job or whatever, that there was this wonderful standard up there, and you submit your paper to this higher authority, or you submit your job application to this higher authority. And if it comes back negatively, that's basically, it's a damning indictment on you and everything you stand for. And you can feel utterly broken by that. When you've sat on a few committees that have looked at applications for jobs, and maybe there's been huge numbers of applications and you can only appoint one person, you begin to realise actually that the way in which you don't get selected for things is to some degree random. And so it's not actually a damning indictment on yourself as a person. It's just the way it goes. And so you need to have, I think you do need to kind of develop a personality that is fairly equitable and on an even keel. And also I think when you're doing experiments or you're working on some theoretical model, there's always this tendency to feel, oh wow, we've got this amazing result. This is absolutely fantastic. I'm going to get this into Nature. This will transform science. And then you do a couple of days later and a little bit more analysis and the effect goes away. And if your entire personal happiness is invested in that result being correct, that path leads to madness. So you need to be able to stand back from things, and you have to kind of look success and disappointment with a certain wry smile.